It's really rare to find Americans who can speak Polish language fluently enough to discuss theology. To be honest, I only met two such persons. They were young Mormon missionaries who one day, many years ago, stopped me on the streets of Warsaw, asking in flawless Polish if I had a few minutes to talk about Jesus. I was a seminary student at the time, so of course I did have some time to talk about Jesus. I was really impressed with their ability to communicate theological concepts so well in a foreign language that is one of the hardest to learn. Unfortunately, when I asked my seminary superiors for permission to study Mormonism in depth, I was told that Mormons aren't really Christians, and if I really must pursue my ecumenical inclinations, I will be allowed to study Lutheran dogmatics in addition to my regular seminary classes, which of course I did. When I reflect today on that short Mormon incident from my life more than 25 years ago, I am somewhat dumbfounded by how easily I accepted back then the word and the judgment of my supposedly wiser superiors. My present day self would not take no for an answer. My 25 years older self would ask them if all the labels we attach to them versus us are really that important. My present day self would tell my superiors that we live in a post denominational world when one's authenticity in following Christ is much more important than one's institutional church's identity. My 49-year-old self would point out that there are many diverse ways to live our Christian calling, oftentimes blending various schools of Christianity and transcending man made labels. And most importantly, my reading this Sunday Gospel self would quote Jesus saying, I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. You see, our intellectual and spiritual arrogance wants us to believe that the early church, that is, the followers of Christ in the first 2 or 3 centuries, were of one mind and one heart, that they all followed the exact same teaching, and that whatever my denomination today happens to be, is the closest version of that primitive, pure, and undivided Christianity. Nothing could be farther removed from the truth. If the author of John's Gospel makes Jesus talk about other sheep that do not belong to this fold, it clearly testifies to the fact that Christianity at the threshold of the 2nd century, when John's Gospel was being composed, had different folds, different schools of thought, different ways of praying and believing. It is a historical fact that nobody even attempts to deny that the early church in Jerusalem was very different from the early church in Rome. And the church in Alexandria, Egypt, was even more different than the first two, not to mention the church in Antioch, Corinth, or Ephesus. First generation Christians were extremely diverse in their beliefs. What was taken for granted in Jerusalem was considered highly suspicious in Rome. What was a common practice in Corinth was frowned upon in Alexandria. They all professed to be the followers of Christ, yet they all felt free to live out their faith in a unique, culturally, and geographically conditioned way. And not surprisingly, we have countless martyrs and saints today from these very diverse Christian communities. Those first, second, and third century martyrs disagreed with each other on many important theological and moral issues, and yet they all gave their lives for Christ. Your neighbors may not go to the same church that you do. Your spouse may be of different faith from yours. Perhaps even your children no longer belong to the institutional church in which you raised them all those years ago. I'm here to tell you that this is all right. Moreover, it's perfectly fine. If John's Jesus was okay with the existence of other folds, if John's Jesus was okay with the reality of one flock and one shepherd being a thing of the eschatological future, we too can relax a little and accept the diversity of faiths as a part of God's design for us. Because at the end of the day, they will know we are Christians by our love, not by our uniformity. Amen.